Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our first live of the Career 101 YouTube series. This is your co-host Subiksha Sivachandran, and
Alia Khan.
Due to technical difficulties, the YouTube live has been shifted to a Facebook live, but this interview will be recorded and uploaded on our YouTube channel for later viewing. As this is the first episode, I would like to explain to you how this series can benefit you and why you should join it. We hold YouTube Lives with individuals from different professions to help you understand what their career entails and ask them all the questions you want to ask. People from various professions are interviewed every month, and we will hold polls on our Instagram and Facebook stories so you can ask them your burning questions. This is beneficial for any graduating students and even individuals looking for a career change to understand the in-depth process and experience of every career path and help them make an informed decision about their future. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below and we will make sure to answer them. Now, without further ado, starting off her career in 2006 as a managing editor for CBA Future, to now being an adjunct professor at Bay Path University, Massachusetts, with a ton of experience, mainly ranging between fields such as management and behavior analysis, please welcome Ms. Shumaila Jafri.
Assalamu alaikum, Ms. Shumaila. I hope you're having a great day. We are honored to have you here. You certainly have an impressive amount of achievements under your belt. Can you tell us more about your job?
Walaikum salam. First of all, I'm really happy to be part of this initiative. I'm hoping that my experience and my contribution can help. So I kind of got into my field by accident. I have studied throughout my life. I studied business administration. So I kind of went through the commerce route. And I did my undergraduate in marketing. So I studied, 4 years, bachelor's and everything. And I started working. After that, I kind of worked at an ad agency for a few months. So learned a little bit about how that works, working with clients and, client management and everything. And it was interesting. It was exactly what I would have expected as a, bachelor's in marketing graduate, but it just wasn't something that I saw myself doing long term. I wanted to do something that had a bit more of an impact directly with people. So I kind of just looked at what was the thing that I really found interesting in my undergrad, and it was psychology. I really enjoyed the one psychology subject that we took. So I kind of explored what were my options in getting into or learning more about psychology, trying to get into a field with a commerce background, and it's not usually that easy. But I was lucky enough to find a graduate diploma in psychology. This was in Australia, so I did a distance learning graduate diploma. And then I actually just kind of randomly applied at a center for speech and hearing. I thought, okay, this is not psychology, but it's the closest I can get without a medical background. And when I applied there, it was just, in my luck that they were actually starting up a new division for behavior analysis. And at that point, I had no idea what that was. I just said, I would like to do anything related to psychology. I would like to work with children, even though I don't have any experience. And they said that we're setting up this department and we will do all the training. If you are interested, go home, research a little bit about behavior analysis and research about autism, because those are the kinds of clients that are primarily the receivers of behavioral therapy. So I went home, researched it, and I thought, okay, this looks interesting. As long as they're giving me some sort of training and everything, I'll go for it. And that's kind of where I started my journey into behavior analysis. Literally within the first 3 months of working, I had an amazing supervisor, and she kind of explained everything from the beginning. And that's basically when I decided, okay, I want this to be my field. So I looked into master's programs. I worked for a little bit longer, actually. I worked for about 9 months or so, got a bit more experience, very basic experience, went for my master's. And then once I finished, I went back to the center, and then I kind of just continued learning. I kind of went through the whole, all of the experience in terms of the basics, and then supervision, training, hiring, all of that stuff. So that was my whole introduction to the field. And then, I guess you'll have more questions, but that was my background, basically.
So currently you're working as a freelancer and adjunct professor at Bay Path University. So what exactly does your job entail?
So I'm part-time professor, adjunct professor at the university, which means that I'm teaching courses in behavior analysis for a master's program in the US. And the whole program is an online master's. They've been running their master's program for quite a few years, pre-COVID, because a lot of people started after COVID, but we were doing this pre-COVID. And I'm basically teaching courses in behavior analysis for people who want to become certified. And at the same time, I'm providing supervision services both within Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and also in the US, remote services from the US.
So I know you got in through like certification, but if someone directly wanted to become a behavior analyst, what would you recommend them to do? What they will be pre-required subjects and
Okay, so in terms of obtaining the certification, there's a few requirements. So there is a specific board that provides the certification. There's actually a couple now, and all of the boards, their main requirements are a few things. So one is that they're looking for, they have actually different ranks in terms of what kind of certification you're going for. And obviously each certification has its own requirements. It's more, a bit more specific. So they have the earliest level, which is basically a behavior technician. And in order to become a behavior technician, what you're doing is you're basically, even out of a high school diploma, and you're doing basically 40 hours of coursework or training. And then you have to pass a competency exam under the supervision of somebody who's certified. And 40 hours is honestly very minimum. It's just an introduction to the field. And that's why for somebody who's practicing as a behavior technician, you're only doing the direct work with a client. You're not involved with decision making. You're not involved with planning or assessment, because obviously you don't have that kind of experience and background. And then if you want to go on further and, let's say you've gotten your bachelor's already, and you want to get that level of a certification, for the bachelor's level, you need an undergrad in psychology, education, or health sciences. And that lets you, first of all, obviously, the coursework that's included with that is important too. So you'll have to cover a couple of behavior analytic classes. And then there is a requirement for supervised field work, which basically means practical application. And in that practical application, you're being given direct supervision from somebody who's certified for everything from direct therapy to case management, basically when you're working with the client, making decisions, and even partially starting to work with parents and families who are involved in that process. And then the final level, which is where you don't need any supervision, you can practice independently, is a certified behavior analyst, which can be obtained if you've obtained your master's degree and covered the behavior analytic coursework, and you have to do additional work experience hours under supervision. And again, for all three of them, you're taking a competency exam to kind of assess your understanding. So once you are a certified behavior analyst, you don't need a supervisor who's monitoring your work. It's always good to still have a network of professionals, but you can practice independently, and you're a lot more involved with parents, with community involvement, training, staff, supervision, all of that stuff.
So as most of our audience are high school students, what subjects would you recommend to them?
Go ahead, sorry.
Is it better to go into the science field, or is there any specific subject would you recommend them to take?
So, given my background, you can tell that, I've gone from commerce to psychology. But honestly, when I did this, the requirements from the board were a little bit different. So, and I was lucky enough to get into a master's program that did accept my undergrad in business. But if you're specifically looking to enter this field, or even, related to this field, I would definitely say going into psychology subjects, if that is if it's something that is available. But if not psychology, then definitely within the sciences. Obviously in high school, you still don't have that much choice in terms of the variety of science subjects, but that does eventually help you get into an undergrad program, which is either psychology, education, or related. So you may not necessarily learn anything about behavior analysis within high school, but it kind of gets you on that track.
You talked about networking and how important it is to network in your field. Could you give us a few tips on how you had learned to network and how important it is to network in your field?
So the way I've done it is honestly, I've worked with a lot of people within the field, and I am always learning, or I'm always trying to learn from others, and as much as I can. So most of my networking has basically just been contacting people that I've worked with, or that I've learned from previously, like my supervisor, and who they've recommended. It's very easy to say that, oh, it's okay, I can learn these things on my own. And a lot of times you can, but it's always good to have someone to talk to. So I've really relied on my supervisor to help with that kind of networking. I've attended a lot of conferences, and I've done a bit of volunteer work too. So I've done that has kind of helped in terms of getting myself to get exposed and learning from other people. And definitely a lot of events, things like conferences have been very helpful, because you get to see people from different areas, different backgrounds and everything. And that's definitely a good way to network. Even if you're not in the field already, you get to see what kind of work people are doing and the kind of specialties. So that definitely helps.
So you said you have worked with children and as a behavior analyst.
Mm-hmm.
So did you enjoy it, or was it stressful for you? What was it like?
So when I started, I had no experience working with kids, and definitely no experience with people with special needs. So I was very stressed out my first couple of weeks, but my supervisor was amazing, and she guided me through the whole process. And I still remember the first client I worked with, still remember the first kind of interaction I had with them, and my hands were shaking. So I'm not going to say that, I wasn't stressed, but it definitely gets easier, as with everything. The more you're exposed, the more you practice things, it gets easier, you get more comfortable. But I kind of do also want to mention that, like, behavior analysis as a field can be implemented across a lot of different individuals, a lot of different populations. So not just children with special needs, but my experience has been within this area. And for this specific experience, or if this is the kind of direction you want to go to with behavior analysis, it is not something that you should do just for fun. It's not something that you should do just because it's the latest thing that people are talking about, because at the end of the day, you are impacting somebody else's life, and you are, and people who are vulnerable. So it definitely requires a level of commitment and a level of, just making sure that this is something that you will be putting your heart into, basically. So yes, I've had challenges. Initially, it was actually very difficult to work with children with special needs and not get so emotionally attached and impacted. I have my own nieces, so I was a lot more, aware of these kinds of things. But it's also really rewarding, because when you work with clients and you see their progress, and you talk to families who are seeing that progress, it's definitely worth everything. And obviously, we're only going through a part of it when we're working. Parents are going through a lot more. So it's really rewarding to be able to contribute in some way. So the challenges are there, and the good parts are there too. I think challenges exist with any field. But I think the biggest thing is that you should try to keep learning. And in that process, you will also understand, okay, is this for me? And if it's not, that's perfectly fine too. But if you don't see yourself in the field, you shouldn't continue just because, you know, people are talking about it, or just because it's an interesting field lately, you know. So yeah, I guess that would be my answer. It's challenging, but it's definitely rewarding too.
So what prospective careers are available for the degree choice or the professional path that you've paved?
So, like I said, so behavior analysis is basically a science that studies behaviors, and we all engage in behaviors, different types of behaviors, both things that are socially acceptable and things that are not really socially acceptable. So with behavior analysis as a career, it's most commonly known or implemented with children with special needs, specifically for autism and ADHD. But in terms of careers, because we all engage in behaviors, all of our behaviors are still impacted by things in the environment. So you can easily look into a career in, let's say, things like behavior management in organizations. So it's called OBM. And a lot of people think, well, that's very similar to HR. Yes, to some extent, and probably you would get a job in HR using OBM, because then you're working not with children, but you're working with adults as employees, and how to, you know, manage employee behaviors. So that's definitely a very common application. Within the Middle East, things are a little bit more limited because the field is still new and people are still kind of understanding more about mental health and everything. But definitely around the world, there's applications of behavior analysis in things like sports and fitness, education, you know, general education, higher education, even in terms of public policy. So like if you're working within the government, and, you know, obviously governments want to implement laws and regulations and things like that, and that involves managing people's behaviors. So even things like that are fields that you can apply behavior analysis in. There's a lot of people who go into substance abuse and, you know, brain injuries and old age, or, you know, clients that are at like retirement age, things like that. So there's a lot of applications because everyone engages in behaviors. It's just the matter of using your understanding of behavior analysis to apply it to these different areas.
So you are involved in organizations such as ABAI. Can you elaborate more on that?
So ABAI is Applied Behavior Analysis International, Association of Behavior Analysis International. And basically it is an organization that connects behavior analysts around the world. They host conferences every year, and they have a lot of networking opportunities. And basically they do a lot of accreditation for universities giving out behavior analytic masters, bachelors, etc. And they have a lot of resources for people who are looking to get into the field and to maintain that network. So I'm part of the ABAI as a member. It's not much direct involvement, but as a member, I'm able to stay in touch with different events that are happening internationally, and then also like the resources that they have. And sometimes they'll also have like international chapter meetings or events and things like that. So I kind of, as much as possible, I try to attend and participate if possible.
Right, of course. How have you been able to consistently do so much, and in some cases be able to outdo yourself regarding experience and versatility in professions in less than just 20 years? Truly is amazing.
Honestly, well, definitely have had a lot of support from my family. They've always been encouraging of learning and just, you know, doing the best in whatever you're doing. And I've always been taught the idea, and I try to pass on the idea of lifelong learning. So we should never think that we know everything or that we're the best in our careers. it's always important to doubt ourselves, because from that doubt comes learning and then progress and improvement. So because of that, like, you know how we have like summer vacations, 2 months off, 3 months off, things like that. From a very young age, my parents would, you know, get us involved into like little courses, like 2 weeks long or a month long courses. Not to like, you know, not to boast or anything that, oh, I know how to do this or anything, but to kind of expand our experience. And the more you get that experience, especially at a young age, the more you start seeing yourself, okay, I like doing this, or I don't like doing this. This is not something that I'm interested in. So definitely, like the variety of things that I've been interested in and I've had a part of is because of that that exposure early on. And even if you don't have those opportunities locally, there are so many resources online, and there's, especially nowadays, I mean, take your example, you know, your organization is giving out such good classes and everything, especially remotely. It's really helpful for people around the world. So it's really important to take advantage of all of these things rather than just saying, oh, this is not part of my field, so I'm not gonna look into this. You never know what you're exposed to and what you might be interested in and what you might make a career out of. So I think that has been like the biggest thing, you know, always keep learning from people. I've had friends who are mostly older than me, and that's helped because you learn from their experience, and you learn from, you know, advice and things that they can give. So I think that's the biggest thing. Just keep exploring, keep looking into different options, volunteer work, you know, even if nothing else, you know, join in with what your parents are doing and try to, you know, get an exposure from them, because that can help too.
Thank you so much for so much insight. Lastly, what advice would you like to give the younger generation of learners?
So I would say there's two things. In terms of becoming a behavior analyst specifically, I would say learn the science and do it for the right reasons, not just for a title or financial rewards or anything. All of those things are valuable in the short term, but they're not the right reasons. The right reason will give you motivation and they'll keep you driven in the long term. So to become a behavior analyst, that's like the thing that even the people that I'm supervising, that's the main thing I would focus on. And then in general, learners in general, especially, you know, people who are in high school right now, start working at a young age, volunteer so you see what's out there, talk to people that are older than you, and basically work hard. And keep in mind that education is not just what you're taught in school, but how you gain knowledge from your environment. So always keep trying to learn from that environment. And if you're not learning, that means you need to challenge yourself and, you know, be in an environment that encourages learning. And one thing that my supervisor has told me, which I keep, you know, doing for myself and for others, always keep looking at your next step, the next thing that you're going to discover, the next thing that you're going to achieve, the thing that you want to aim for, and keep learning. And that whole idea of lifelong learning, you're never going to stop learning. Even if you have your PhD, you're never going to stop learning. And you should always keep that mindset.
Shumaila, we have a question from our viewers.
Sure.
Can you suggest some good institutes or website where you can do these certifications from?
So in order to become certified, you, like I said, you have to go through like the academic courses. There are definitely a few online courses that are available, especially coming in from the US. But you can't only get, like, for example, these certifications are not short-term courses, like, you know, 2 months or 6 months long. It does require like the undergrad degree or master's degree, etc. What I can recommend is, like, for example, there is Florida Institute of Technology, FIT. They have a lot of courses that are for people who are not aiming for certification, but, you know, you get a little bit of that exposure early on. And if you're coming in from high school, it might seem too technical, but it's a good initial exposure. And then if you find it interesting, it can take you, you can definitely get more. They do have courses, like actual, undergrad programs, master's programs. But then you can also, specifically for behavior analysis, if you go to the BACB website, so the Behavior Analysis Certification Board, they have a whole list of all universities, all continuing education, short courses, things that you can take to either take it as a career path or even just get interested. So the Behavior Analysis Certification Board, BACB, is probably a good option, and ABAI. Both of them have the good amount of resources.
Are there any other questions from the viewers, Alia?
No, that is it.
Right. So we have one from our Facebook comment. This is from Mrs. Sana Saher. She is a parent of a child in the autistic spectrum. She wants to know what are the red flags that we should see as parents in our therapists, our behavioral therapists.
Okay, so I will just give a disclaimer that I'm definitely not certified to make any diagnoses or anything like that. So for something like that, you should definitely go to a child psychiatrist or psychologist. But in my personal experience over the years in working with children with autism, some of the early things to look out for would be, even from a very young age, like infant age, looking at the kind of interaction your child is having. Are they making eye contact? Are they responding to your facial expressions? A lot of moms will, be smiling, making all those cute, sounds and everything. And you want to try to see, is your child reacting to those sounds? Are they, are they reaching out for your physical affection? And then as children get a little bit older, early ages, you start seeing them imitate. So if you start clapping your hands, they will also do the same thing. And if you're seeing those kinds of things, and it's not just one, because obviously every child develops at a different age. So one of those things may not be an issue, but if you're seeing a couple of things like eye contact, imitation that's a little bit weak, not playing with toys in typical ways. So for example, a child who might have special needs, if you give them blocks, they might just line them up or put all the red ones together, all the blue ones together, and that's it. But for somebody who is typically developing, they might start to make a house, or they will pretend to make like a character or something and pretend like they're talking. So imaginative play is definitely something that is a challenge for children with autism. And even things like cars, for example, they'll just line up the cars instead of actually playing with them on a ramp and making sounds and things like that. The three main areas would be social interaction or emotional interaction, and play skills, and then also language. But as I said, for language, a lot of children start talking at an early age, and then they don't meet their other milestones like walking and things like that. So, and it could be the other way around. But if you start seeing a few of those kinds of signs, then it might be a good idea just to consult with somebody who can actually give a more professional opinion. And sometimes, your psychiatrist might just say, no, this is okay. This is, let's wait a little bit longer and see how that develops. And if those are still a concern, then you can, go further with more information. I hope that answers, and hope that helps.
Yeah, Mrs. Sana, I hope you were able to get an answer for your question. Thank you for the advice that you've given our young learners, which is a huge part of our audience. And thank you for accepting our invite and taking out the time for this interview. We here at Offreach are really grateful for your presence, Ms. Shumaila. Don't forget to tune in to our next episode, where we will tackle questions about a career in pharmacy with Ms. Samar Mujib, who is an associate professor at Hygia Group of Institutions on 3rd December, 3 p.m. Saudi time. Take care, everyone, until we meet next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for attending.